Welcome to the DIY Goalie Podcast, where hosts and goalie coaches Nathan Park and Connor Monday share their insights on how to become a better goalie. Goalies, welcome back to another episode of the DIY Goalie. How are you guys doing today? As always, I am having webcam issues again. For some reason, if you're watching on YouTube, my webcam is in black and white today, and I tried whatever I could to fix it. So, we're rolling with it. We are turning back the clock a little bit, doing a vintage DIY goalie episode on on my half of things today. So, yeah, never a dull moment over here at the DIY Goalie Podcast. I think we spend more time troubleshooting technical difficulties before we record than we actually spend recording most of the time. But we are
all
here.
this is saying is that we just have to start doing this at the facility, and so that way it's one thing, it's there, we don't have to worry about it ever again. And yeah, I don't know, just I feel like that's just gonna have to be the case.
Yeah, I don't know if the internet there would do well enough to
No, it
stream,
wouldn't. It absolutely would not.
yeah, we are here. We're having fun, and we are going to be talking all about backup goalies today. So that's kind of what we're going to tackle today, because some of you guys might be in that position, and if you aren't now, probably at some point in your careers, you'll get to that point that you might find yourself in a backup role. And although not ideal, we'd all like to be playing, 100% of the games all the time. You just got to make the most of it. It's still an important role on the team. And yeah, we're going to kind of talk about some things to make sure that you're playing that role properly, being a good teammate, and making sure you're ready if you do have to go in. And then we're also going to talk a little bit about EBUG, so the emergency backup goalies, and kind of get into that a little bit. So that's what we have on the docket today. As always, it's myself, Nathan Park, and Connor Monday on the other side of things, and we are having fun with it. So while we dive in here, why don't you start us off, Connor, and kind of talk about the role of a backup goalie and kind of how we can be good teammates about it.
Well, considering that that was my position for most of my hockey career,
Connor is well versed.
exactly, exactly. I am well prepared for that position. Um, the role of a backup goalie, I don't know, like from my experience with it, uh, it's one of those things like you kind of hated it because you didn't get a lot of playing time, and then even then, if you did, you're coming in cold, and especially if you're going into a game where the team's down like 5-0 in like the first period or whatever. But I think just being in that position, it puts you in a little bit of a unique perspective, because you get a chance to kind of watch what it is that your partner's doing. You get to interact more with the team on the bench and interact with the coaches and all that, because like obviously if we're playing and we're in the net, we're just kind of by ourselves with our thoughts, which nobody really should be. But um so it gives you like an interesting perspective and a little bit of an appreciation for the game and for the position that we play. Whenever I was riding the bench, I would take that opportunity just to kind of watch what both sides are doing, what the opposing team's goalie is doing, and what my team's goalie is doing, what they are playing that day. And if there's like a save that they make that I know that I struggle with, then I can say, okay, well, that's how they read the play, and that's something that I want to do into my game moving forward. There is that like superstition, or that kind of um yeah, I'm gonna say superstition, just with the backup position, is that like if you're in the backup role, especially when you're in like when you get into playing like double A, triple A and beyond, like if you're in that backup position, then it's just kind of like a telltale sign that like you're not good enough, which is not always the case. I find that there are some coaches and that there are some teams that um kind of mismanage kind of the starter and the backup role, um especially when I was coaching in juniors. Like our head coach grotesquely mismanaged kind of how that was supposed to go versus how I wanted it to go. And the same thing when I was coaching in junior B as well. I think the backup role is a great position. I think all goalies realistically should be in that position at least once or twice in their career, if not beyond. Um, and it offers you a unique perspective. Obviously, it can be boring just sitting there, just watching the game go back and forth. But I think it presents a unique opportunity for everybody to just kind of watch the game from not necessarily like a fan's perspective, but just kind of watching how your team plays when you're not on the ice and what you can do to help the team be better. Nathan, you and I were talking before we jumped on here, and your computer decided to time travel back to 1920, where just you also want to keep yourself occupied at the same time, and I didn't do it when I played, but there have been instances where I've been on teams where we've done this with our backup goaltenders, and they count how many faceoffs that centermans have won, how many shots um, that our goalie has taken. Sometimes when I was coaching juniors and I would be up in a broadcast booth or whatever, and I'd have one of the scratch players with me, and if one of them was a goalie, I would have them. If I only had the one, I would have them run the camera because I needed somebody to do that. But also, if they were up there, I'd have them take my coaching binder that I had there, and I'd have them kind of scout both sides during the game. So I think it presents an interesting opportunity to kind of learn and to be a real student of the game, especially when you're not on the ice. So that's kind of
Yeah.
where that's where my thoughts are with it. I don't know what yours are, but I feel like they're probably eerily similar.
Yeah, I kind of go back to the Ian Gordon interview that we had and his kind of parting thoughts, his parting piece of advice when I asked him for one was to embrace that development mindset, right? And I think this very heavily applies to anyone who finds themselves in a backup position, a backup role. Um, it's not ideal. Like I've been there, I've been on both ends of it. I've been a backup, I've been a starter. Obviously, as a backup, like again, you want to get in there. It's tough sitting on the bench. It's tough not being the guy and to kind of know that almost you're viewed as like, second fiddle or whatever. But at the same token, that also means that there's an opportunity there to develop and to embrace that development and to, take the opportunity to get better, to learn from the environment around you, and to just like, you know, work on some skills that maybe you don't get as a starter, stuff like interacting with your teammates and coaches, because as a starting goalie you're not really in those positions very often. And the other thing as a backup I would say is to have fun with it. Like me personally, this isn't going to work for everybody, but me personally, my approach on game day was completely different if I was starting as to if I was not starting that game. And I know that can be counterintuitive for some people, which is fine. But for me personally, I found I did the best coming off the bench in situations where I wasn't even really like, I don't know, thinking about it, I guess. Like, so for all of those out there that play junior, anything like that, the good old before the game sewer ball, when I started, I never once would play sewer ball. When I was backing up, 100%, that's all I did before the game was I jump into play sewer with the teammates and have a little bit of fun with it, right? And it's that was kind of my approach, I guess, when I wasn't playing, was just to kind of relax a little bit, almost take a not necessarily a break, but to kind of have a little bit of a game day reset, I guess, where you're having fun, you're doing stuff you normally wouldn't do when you're starting. And I found that really helped for if I did have to go in off the bench, because early on in my career, when I was backing up more and stuff like that, I found that I'd be a little bit nervous if you got to the point that you might have to go in, even though you wanted to play, but then you're like, uh-oh, like now I got to go in and my team's down 4-0 and uh-oh, or oh no, it's close and the other goalie's hurt and I got to try and go in and, keep us in it,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And so I find if we're thinking too much about it, at least for me personally, anyways, when I was thinking too much about it, it kind of would make me tense and nervous. So I approached it more from, having a little bit more of a fun, kind of environment to when I wasn't playing. Um, and then yeah, just when you are in that role, like Connor said, like the learning aspect of it and the stuff that you can take away from having that kind of bird's eye view, you don't get that as much when you're in the game. Like you can actually like, you know, look at what the other team is doing in terms of systems, kind of their tendencies and all that. You can kind of see like you can even talk to your teammates a little bit more than you would be able to when you're in a game, right? If somebody comes off after a goal or whatever, you can talk to your D and be like, hey, how would you have rather, the goalie played that or whatever? Like, say it was a 3-on-2 and, you know, something happened and it resulted in a goal, and you can just talk to them and be like, hey, what did you see out there? What was your thoughts? Like, what would you have rather seen or, blah, 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 stuff like that. Like, you can have that dialogue a little bit more. But, long-winded way of just saying like that opportunity to develop as a backup goalie is still there. You can still get better, you can still improve and take a lot out of the situation. So just make the most of it is kind of the big takeaway, I think, and just learn to be a good teammate about it too.
There's a story that I was just thinking of with the interview that I did with Luke Lush. Which, by the way, sorry about the audio quality about my mic. I didn't realize that it was recording through my PS5 controller mic there, so a little bit of a DIY blunder on that part. But anyways, um,
Wouldn't be a podcast episode without, so it's all good.
exactly. I had microphone issues last time. Nathan has camera issues today.
Yeah.
Um, but Luke had a really interesting story where he was with Larange in the what was it, the
SJHL. Yeah.
SJHL. Thank you.
Yeah.
Um, where I think it was either if he wasn't starting or if he wasn't playing, then him and a few other teammates would still be on the ice after practice for another hour or so later, and then they would just kind of lock up the arena afterwards, and then whatever they were doing on the ice is whatever that they were doing. But Luke was taking that opportunity to get better, to have some fun with his teammates at the same time, and just taking advantage of the ice time that he had gotten. Obviously not going to necessarily be the case at the minor league levels, but still the point being was that he wasn't complaining and moaning and whatever, and the other word that I can't say on here. But that's, I think, just there's a lot of negativity when it comes to that. Oh, I'm not starting, or oh, I haven't gotten a start in 5 games or whatever, however you want to say it. And that's not, I wouldn't look at it as a blunder on kind of your ability as an athlete or as a goaltender. There are other external factors that come to that. But again, if you're taking that opportunity to grow, to get better, there's nothing wrong with it at the end of the day. If you look at a lot of the goalie schools that are out there right now, a lot of the guys that do what we do for a living, a lot of them are guys who were in a backup role. I don't. I'm gonna make a bold statement here, but I honestly think that like the backup goalies are the smartest people on earth, because they're the ones that are taking the time to learn and kind of be philosophical in a way and question everything, right? And really just learning and just taking that opportunity to study the game, essentially. Back to my other point now with talking about the stigma and just kind of the just with the stigma of tandems and goaltending. I mean, like I mentioned earlier, like I've been on a team. I've actually been on a few teams with the same coach where it was brutal when it comes to the 1A or the 1B or just the starter versus the backup. Because there were nights where I thought that I always gauged who would be playing by who did well in practice, essentially. And even every time I kept getting shut down because like no, so and so is our starter, so and they're good. This is a good team, and so we want to play him. And I've said to this coach multiple times, it's like, yeah, but he got lit up 8 goals on like 15 shots. Mind you, we also scored 5 on 16. But the point being was, like, I I didn't like the fact that our goals against was up so high against this team. Obviously, like yes, he's our starting goaltender. Yes, he is. This goalie was the better goalie that we've had out of the 6 goalies that this coach decided to bring, which is absolutely ridiculous. But still, like it's like no, this guy like goalie B was doing better than goalie A in practice. Goalie B hasn't had a chance to face up against the top seeded team in the league or whatever. Goalie A has, and we put goalie A 2 or 3 times now against this team, and obviously we're not getting the results. So we need to switch it up. And every time we keep getting shut down about it because oh no, this guy's our starter. This guy's a better goalie. We have to play him. I don't know where I'm going with this point, but I think just there's still that stigma and that mentality, and I think we see that as well in minor hockey as well, right? And how do we as the goalie union kind of fix that? I don't think it helped at all really when there was the Linus Olmark and Jeremy Swayman tandem there, but I don't know. I really don't because I think it hurts development somewhere, and it doesn't really give certain athletes a fair shake at things when it's an opportunity that they could really impress other people with. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I don't like there's definitely a trend towards more of the like tandem, like 1A, 1B as opposed to like the full on starter backup. Um I I think it's all situational for sure. Um to me like minor hockey, like you're probably not looking like to me nobody should be looking at one goalie gets more playing time than the other until at least U15 when you're talking about minor hockey. Um, and then, even then, maybe only at the club level when it comes to looking at that. But I've
Right.
been like my first year of club when I played Bantam AAA or Bantam AA my first year. Um, I came in and kind of was a little bit of a nobody, showed pretty well in tryouts, had a bit of a down start to the year and didn't get a whole lot of playing time. And then our other goalie got hurt. And then I kind of got a little bit more of an opportunity and got a lot of playing time. And they were like, oh, he's doing well actually. And then we kind of, when the other goalie came back, then there was a couple stretches where I actually played a little bit more than the other guy did and ended up getting like most improved player on our team that year or whatever. And sometimes, these goalies kind of get buried when they don't get the opportunity to develop and to show. And it's also discouraging too, like just that mental kind of, lapse, I guess, or bottleneck or
But
whatever,
that's but
because
that's but that's that's the other thing too, right? And I'm sorry to interrupt, but like that's the other thing too. Like I look at Team Canada as an example, and I can't remember their names off the top of my head. I think it was like Thomas Milich who had recently won the World Juniors. Where's he at now? I honestly don't know. I haven't kept up with him since then, but like there have been a lot of goalies, and I hate that I'm going to reference this because I don't like this guy with a passion. Trav Four Oilers had a really kind of interesting point with a couple of games where Henrik Lundqvist was out, and I forgot what this other, I think like Slapsky. Like he came in and filled in for a couple of games with the Rangers. Posted a shutout in his second game, and I think had one or two goals on 30 some shots. Since then, like obviously it's been a few years now since that era, but since like nobody heard of him since,
Yeah,
right?
another
So,
another good example of that would be for me was Zach Vicali. Like that's a guy
oh
that
yeah, yeah,
he's
yeah,
only had a couple games in the NHL, but they've been solid games, and he just never seems to get a full shake at it. But I mean, kind of like what I was um, getting to eventually was unfortunately we end up in those situations. And as goalies, like we can only control the controllables. Like, unfortunately, we can't control the decisions the coaches make. You might be in a spot where you could be better or be improving more than your other goalie and they keep getting starts or whatever the case is. And unfortunately, you can't control that. But what you can control is your work ethic when you are at practice. You can control your preparation, your routine, your mindset. You can control all those things. So when push comes to shove and you maybe do get that chance, you can take it and run with it, right? And that's kind of, I think, the best way to approach if you end up in this situation. And again, just having fun with it. Like, just
yeah.
kind of to go on to build off that with the coaches side of things. Like, my first year as junior, I was 17. So I still, looking back at it, don't really know how I made junior as a 17-year-old, but I guess the cards kind of fell in place for me. But I did have a really good start to the year, which I think helped me kind of solidify a spot, I guess. But I really struggled because that was the first year like I ever really had good goalie coaching. Like, that was when I started working with Schwartzy, and he was, for the first time, I was learning about tracking a puck and head trajectory. And up until that point, everything was just pure athleticism. And so that year was a transition year for me because I was changing my game. And unfortunately, that doesn't happen overnight. And it takes a while to adapt and to, be consistent with good habits and all that stuff. So my middle of the year was awful. And then I finally kind of started to figure it out and things were falling into place. And I had a stretch because our team actually brought in a third goalie. And I don't know why they did this, but I had a stretch where they rotated the other two goalies who started, but they just kept me as the backup for every game. So one of the other guys would start while the other was in the stands and I was on the bench. And then the guy who started went into the stands and the guy who was in the stands would start and then I'd still be on the bench. I don't know. It was weird. I don't know why they did it that way, but I think it was an 8 or 9 game stretch that happened. And in 3 of those games, I actually had to go in off the bench and I ended up winning 2 of them and I had 1 goal against on like 50 some shots in those 3 half games. And I went into the coach's room after, and or not after, but like at some point after one of our practices, and was kind of like, hey, like I feel like I've been playing well. Like, you know, I almost feel like I've earned a start. Like, is there any way that I can get into the net or whatever? And he turns around, he pops up our stats page on his computer and he highlights my save percentage. And he's like, this is why you're not getting a start. And I'm just like, well, I've done really well lately. I've been putting in the work, all of that stuff, right? Like, but anyways, my point with that story is that unfortunately we can't control that. We like the coach is going to make the decision, and unfortunately, whether it's justified or not, whether we think it's right or not, it is what it is. That season or that summer in the off season, I got traded out to Manitoba, and I ended up having 3 really good solid years the rest of my junior career and won a couple championships and all of that, right? So you just got to make the most of what you can and take the time, like we talked about, to develop as much as you can and just stick with it. Like we've talked about lots before, is we can only control what we can control. Everything else is outside of that. But if you put in the work and make the most of the opportunities you're given, more often than not, it usually comes with a good result. Now, unfortunately, that doesn't happen all the time. Some guys just get screwed, and that is what it is, and it sucks. But do what you can, keep your head down, nose to the grindstone, keep going, and make the most of it. Goaltending is a matter of inches. As goalies, we need to gain every advantage possible. This is where Visual Edge can help. With Visual Edge's cutting edge cognitive and visual training, you'll improve your reaction time, anticipation, and overall decision making. Imagine seeing the puck faster, reacting quicker, and making those clutch saves.
Walking in one on one, makes a shot, big save by the goaltender, and it comes back the other way.
Ready to unlock your full potential? Visit visualedge.com and use code DIYPOD for 20% off. That's DIYPOD at visualedge.com. VIZUAL edge.com.
I think of um, when I was coaching back in juniors, and this was more specifically for when I was with Spruce Grove Regals in Junior B. Um, Again, just kind of a little bit of a rotating door with goalies. Like we had some consistent players, but not a lot, I'd say. And again, like they come up and ask me after, it's like, why am I not playing? Like why? Like I'm playing, I'm doing better than this guy, this, and that. It's like that's coach's decision. It's not mine. But I'd have to remind them at the same time. It's like just keep working and practice. Like I know you want to play, and my goal for you is to move on beyond here, which one of them did with midway through the season. But if this is kind of like the end point for you, then like I suppose I get it. But like I think for everybody, it's like you want to move on beyond that, right? And so I think it's a good kind of reminder, and I think we've kind of beaten the dead horse with it. But um, just if you are in that position, like always, like maximize the ice time that you're given, right? And if it's not the team that you're currently on that's noticing the improvements, or just that the fact that you are better than the other guy due to whatever it is that's going on, whatever the situation is, um, use that to improve and better yourself. So then when the off season comes, when teams are looking for goalies, you have that opportunity to say, hey, I was with this other team, but I've been improving a lot. I'd like to showcase essentially what I have and prove to you that I can be the goalie that it is that you're looking for. Um, yeah, I don't know, like this, like I think that's a whole wormhole that we can go down. But I think just to kind of just sum it up is that like if you are like if you do find yourself, like everybody should be in the backup position in their career. Everybody will be in that position. You're not always going to be the starter, but utilize that opportunity to better yourself and to expand your knowledge, not only in a coaching setting, but just in in a game setting and in a team setting there as well.
Yeah. So if you do find yourself in that position, just some of the things that I guess come with the role, and some of the things that you should be doing. So Connor touched on it, but practice, like make the most of it. And one thing that'll go a long way for you guys to get into coaches' good books is doing the extra. And sometimes you don't have a choice, sometimes you do, but the coach will like you a lot better if you make the right choice. But, stuff like when the scratches and the rookies or whatever are staying out after practice to do some extra work, a lot of times the backup goalie is the one staying out there for them to shoot on, right? Or the third goalie if you guys are like in college or something like that, and you have three. But um, if you find yourself in that position, that's your role. That's your role to be out with those guys, the guys who are injured and coming back from an injury or who are scratched and have the extra, skate at the end of a game day skate or whatever it is. The other thing too is just really making sure that you are being a good teammate. Like when you're on the bench, like pat guys on the head or whatever on the back when they come off, like, you know, be vocal, like cheer your guys on, get involved in the game. Don't just be that goalie that kind of sits in the corner with his ball cap on, looking like he's bored out of his skull. Like be involved. Um, my first year of college, I think that was why I got a chance to be our backup for playoffs because the first couple games, like my first year of college, I was our third goalie. First couple games, I was in the stands. We lost a couple, so they put me in to back up, not to start, but to back up. And I kind of, showed that energy when I was in that game and ended up being the backup for the rest of our playoffs or whatever, right? And I think that kind of helped play a role in that. But like obviously, as backup goalies, even though we never maybe like to admit it, we do kind of somewhat want the other guy to fall in his face a little bit. um, that's kind of natural. I think that everybody gets to that point that they want to see the other guy let in 4 goals on the first 4 shots so they can get a chance to go in, and that's perfectly natural. But we can't do anything to show that that's what we want to happen, right? Because I know a few times like I was like, oh yeah, I'd love for us to go down 4-0 right off the bat, then I can go in and we can win 5-4 or whatever, right? But you know even though that's just kind of human nature, you have to make sure that that doesn't creep into anything outward or anything like that. You still have a mindset where you want to be there. You still are being a good teammate. You're giving your goalie partner props for making saves. You're talking to them at, breaks like timeouts or intermission or whatever, um, and still being supportive. So you just got to make sure that you're there for your team, you're being a good presence, you're having energy, you're being involved, you're being the guy that's staying out and helping at practice or at the end of practice. You're the guy that's staying out for the shootouts at the end when the starter's like, nah, I don't want to blow my groin before tomorrow's game or whatever the case is, right? So these are the kind of things that as a backup you should really embrace. Like take the role and embrace it, tackle it head on, do the things you need to do, improve when you get the chance to. And like we said, if you're on the bench, you're opening the gate or you're taking stats or whatever the case is, right? And giving guys that kind of support, talk to your teammates, see what they're seeing, tell them what you're seeing from a goalie's perspective. You might be able to say, hey, the other goalie I noticed is not rotating very well on the pushes across. So if we can get a push or a pass back door, he's not going to push there. And let's try and expose that or whatever the case is, right? You guys can kind of be involved a little bit and provide value even if you're not physically in the net.
Take the opportunity, get better, move on
No.
to next season, something like that. So, you had wanted to talk today about being an EBUG, and I'm a little bit jealous of it because you have the experience of being an Edmonton Oilers emergency backup goalie. But as I was thinking about that while you were going on your spiel, I wanted to talk a little bit about as well with it. Not necessarily being an EBUG, but kind of being a call up you know I've had a couple of opportunities in my playing career where I've got to play with the team that's a tier or two above me or anything. So I'll let you go on about the EBUG rant here, and then we'll kind of talk about um getting
The
called up,
affiliate.
whether
Yeah.
the affiliate program essentially.
Yeah. Yeah, I can touch on that too, because I'm sure every goalie at some point has been an affiliate because, goalies are few and far between. But yeah, so my last year at college and the year after I was done, so over 2 seasons, I got to be one of the emergency backups for the Oilers. I was kind of, I think, third on the depth chart. Like the University of Alberta goalies were kind of ahead of me with that. But if they were gone or something like that, they couldn't make it, then they'd have me come out. So I know when it comes to ebugs, like the number one question people have is how do you become an ebug? And it varies by team. So with the Oilers, they obviously run with the local university and college guys. So that's kind of where they pull for their pool. Some teams, they hold tryouts. Like I think the Kings and the Devils kind of, put it
Florida
out
did.
to, yeah,
Florida did, I
there's a
think,
few
too.
teams. Yeah, they put it out to the goalie community in the local area and just said, "Hey, we're holding tryouts and come out and whatever." And then some teams, it's like somebody within the organization, like a media guy or something like that, that kind of
Shout
plays
shout out Dave Ayers, Carolina
Aries. Yeah,
Hurricanes legend.
yeah. Yeah, it's against the Leafs too, so that always makes me smile. But yeah, so it varies team by team. They all have kind of their set ways of doing what they want to do, I guess. But how it worked for me, so I got the call or whatever. They gave me like the little pass that I could go down into the like players concourse and um they gave me like the underground parking pass, so I'd have gear in my car and I would just park underground. I'd go up, I'd go into the media area, and they had like a little media buffet and whatever. And so you'd kind of make the buffet and then you'd take a to go container because you're a broke college student too. and, you know, so, but it was kind of cool because you'd be in that area and you'd get to see guys like, Darren Pang, Craig Simpson, like, all these guys, Louis DeBrusque, all these media guys that, you see on TV all the time. And you're just like, wow, these guys are just sitting here in a room around me, right? And
These
it's pretty
guys
cool.
exist.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and then basically after that, we'd go up to like the catwalk area where the media was. And that's where, we'd sit. And of course, there's like all the snacks up there too and all that. So, um, I think the first one or two times I did it, I'm like, oh no, I can't be eating that stuff because, what if I have to go in or whatever? And then I'm like, after the first one or two times, I'm like, what are the odds I'm actually going to have to go in? Whatever. I'm just going to load up on food. And even if I do go in, I'm going to get lit up by these NHL guys. So, whatever. But yeah, so me personally, I never got to do anything like practice or dress for a game or anything like that. Obviously, the game one is pretty, I guess you could say, rare, that guys get to go in for a game or even get to go down on the bench. But practice happens a lot more than people think. Just because, things come up for practice or there's guys that are hurting a little bit that take maintenance days or whatever. So they get the local backup. And that's both teams. That's the local team, but also like the visiting team who's in town before their game that night or the next day or whatever. Because I know one of my former goalie partners from junior, who was one of the U of A goalies that was doing the EBUG at the same time I was, he got to practice with the Red Wings. He got to practice with the Oilers and all that stuff. And, just goalie has a funeral to go to that day. So he got called out or whatever, different reasons. So practice does happen quite a bit actually. So that's kind of cool for the guys that get to do that. Um, and then when it comes to a game, So I did come close to being able to dress for the Predators because the night before they were in Calgary and Pecorine got hurt, and the guy that they called up, he got his gear lost on the flight. So they lost his gear on the flight. He made it, but so I was actually talking to David Poyle, the GM at the time. He was texting me and also had a phone call with him, so that was pretty cool. But he was basically like, "Oh, we're gonna try and find gear. We're working with the Oilers to just piece together gear for this guy, but if not, then you'll have to step in, basically." Um, they found gear, so I didn't get to, but he did mention that I would just basically be in a room on my own, like I wouldn't be on the bench. And at the time, I was kind of like, "Oh, that's stupid," and whatever. But Belly kind of shed some light on that when he uh, talked to us in his interview that it actually burns one of their cards, and so I could totally see why that would be an issue. But yeah, so basically we just have our gear at the rink. We're on standby. If something happens, the guys come and get us and say, "Hey, we got to bring you down. You get dressed." Every situation's different. Like you do see sometimes when the guys get dressed that they're on the bench because they do like show that on TV a little bit. Sometimes the guy just, again, like in my situation, would be back in, some dressing room somewhere under the bleachers just waiting. um, but yeah, so that's kind of the experience of it. It's kind of cool. You get, go watch free NHL games and, potentially be a part of some rare incident where you get to go out. I mean, you look at guys like Scott Foster and David Aries and oh, who is the one that did it here? I can't remember his name now.
Matt
For like,
Berlin,
yeah, right, Berlin. Yeah, the
which is which
6 seconds of fame.
yeah, which actually funny enough because Stuart Skinner and Berlin were teammates
Yeah,
in SSAC, so it would have been really cool to have like a full circle moment there. But no, instead it was Campbell who
yeah.
was who was playing there. But no, that would have been really cool.
Yeah. But yeah, that's basically the lowdown on the e-bugs. At least from my experience, like I said, everybody else's are probably a little bit different just because it varies from organization to organization. But yeah, cool experience for sure. Something I get to say that not a lot of people do get to say, even though it really didn't pan out to anything. But I think I was able to do it for 12 games. So I got to watch 12 free Oilers games and eat media buffet for 12 games and have a good time. So,
Yeah, I am one of the few. I'm one of those ones that say that I cannot do that because my house league butt did not go anywhere. So,
uh,
um, nothing wrong with house league, by the way. Just putting it out there. Um, yeah, no, that I love seeing those stories, like the Scott Foster, the David Ayers. The David Ayers is a pretty famous one. Matt Berlin recently, a couple years ago. I love seeing those stories, and it gives like especially in the States, it gives those beer league guys some hope that
yeah.
they can still live out the NHL dream even though they're what in their 40s.
Well, the
Doing
other the other cool one I find too is when you see the organization's goalie coach be their e-bug. So you get like a
yeah,
50-year-old Dwayne
Rob
Rollison
Tallis, yeah,
or Peter Budaj
yeah,
or something like that
Bob
have to dress.
Essensa, yeah,
Yeah, those are cool too. But
coming out of retirement for that, but
yeah,
no, the equivalent for people like myself um, is essentially getting called up or being in the affiliate program. I don't remember much of it, but it does show up in my hockey Edmonton, hockey Alberta resume essentially that I have affiliated for a couple of teams throughout my playing career, and like, these are teams that are 1-2 tiers above me. And it was interesting because you essentially get to play at a higher ish level. You're meeting a whole bunch of different guys on the team, nobody that you really know except for maybe one or two depending on the situation. But even then, like they're like I recall, not distinctly, but recall enough like when I have played in those games where, again, same thing, I'm sitting on the bench and doing my thing, or I am playing in the game, and whether we do well or we didn't do well, didn't really matter. But I think just getting the fact to, you get to play up a couple of levels, probably a couple of levels outside of the level that you're supposed to be playing at, but it was still a great enough or cool enough feeling that like you get to be called up to those levels essentially, and play a little bit more competitive hockey than what you are originally used to. So
Yeah. Yeah, I know there was one my midget 15 AAA year. I got called up to the midget AAA team, and it was for a weekend in Grand Prairie. So I spent a weekend in Grand Prairie with a bunch of guys that I did not know. And funny enough, actually, the goalie that didn't go for that weekend didn't go. Like, he said he had like a funeral or something like that to go to, or some family thing. And turns out they found out that his parents were gone that weekend. So he said he had this family thing so he could spend the weekend at home with his girlfriend with no parents home. And so
legend.
that's why I got to go up to Grand Prairie with midget AAA team that I knew nobody on for a
That's
weekend.
funny.
So yeah,
That's funny.
I
Oh,
I kind of
that's
was like,
that's that's awesome.
I was like, oh, I wonder if they're gonna kick this guy off the team for that, because something like that coaches don't usually like too
Oh yeah, no,
much.
that's wow. That's
So
wow. Yeah, that's ballsy.
yeah,
I don't know, but I think if you do get any opportunities to be in a be an affiliate for a team like Double A, Triple A, or even just a couple of tiers up, or if you do get the opportunity to be like Nathan was, being the EBUG essentially. If you get that opportunity, jump on it, and if you do get to experience that, just enjoy it. Because only a very, very, very select few will ever get that opportunity, and so I think um, for something like that, that's really cool to see.
yeah, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. And learn from the people around you that are playing at that level, and
Oh
kind of
yeah,
see
definitely.
what it takes, right? Because sometimes I feel like we, uh, I don't know, kind of romanticize, for lack of a better word, the higher levels. Like, we almost feel like they're unattainable, but then you start to
Hmm.
get to those levels and you realize, oh, there's not that much of a step up difference than where I'm at. And if I can just, you know, get a little bit better, develop a little bit more, I can get to that level. So it's
Right.
cool to see, how you gauge there, how you fit in, and all that stuff too. So just kind of, make the most out of the resources around you that are there, right? So,
Yeah.
all
But
right, take us home.
yeah, sounds good. For those listening on the podcast, whether it be on Apple Podcast, iHeart, Spotify, thank you very much for listening. Please be sure to give us a follow if you are new to listening to us, whether you were recommended or whether we just happen to come across your, for lack of a better term, for you page there, your suggested picks. Please feel free to give us a follow, because we do have a lot of exciting stuff coming down the pipeline here at the DIY Goalie. So it will be a fun time. If you are watching on the YouTube side of things, thank you very much for watching. Please make sure you like and subscribe. Follow us on our social media platforms, all on the DIY Goalie. If you are in the Edmonton area and you do want to come train with myself or Nathan or any of our amazing staff members, go visit TrueNorthGoaltending.com. We do have a bunch of awesome promotions happening right now. We are coming up on our open house sessions, which I think all of them are almost booked. I think we still have
Yeah,
like
we've only
five
got
spots left or so.
5 openings. Yeah.
So, anyways, we do have a lot of fun stuff there. We have our camps for July and August open and ready to be filled. So make sure you go check that out, as well as we are also running a first time goalie offer at our training facility in Nisku, Alberta. So again, I'll go find it out at truenorthgoaltending.com there. Again, you can follow us on the social media platforms as well, all listed as True North Goaltending, except for Instagram, which is at YEG Goalie Coach. If you want to follow myself, because you can, it's at Monday GC only on Instagram. I don't really post anywhere else. But yeah, beyond that, it's been a fun one. Thank you guys so much for listening. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you guys next time. Make some saves.